So cold plunging in the morning or whenever you cold plunge, but especially if in the morning, has a profound effect on raising levels of all three of those neurotransmitters throughout the entire day. So we're talking elevated mood, elevated happiness, elevated focus, basically everything that you want as a human being. Everything as a human being that makes you either succeed in what you're doing and enjoy what you're doing more while you're doing it.
Welcome everyone to Against the Herd, where we explore unconventional approaches that lead to unconventional growth. And today, Mr. Bosted, I think this is one that we are very much passionate about,
Very excited
and have felt the benefits of, whether indirectly, directly. There's so much to unpack here. Please start us off with exactly what it is we're talking about today.
Today we are talking about cold plunges, cold therapy. Could be described in a number of different ways. Basically making yourself uncomfortably cold for benefit. Multiple different benefits that derive from it.
And I want to also start off with that this is a Cabernet. It's a Meiomi. It is one of the finest twist-offs that you will ever find.
Beautiful. You had me worried there for a second.
Yeah, so this is... Well, let's start off with how you got into cold plunges.
Okay. I'm trying to think, should we... Like fitness journey wise, you and I are both very active people who, have been in entrenched fitness routines for some time. I want to set that as like a baseline just so people understand. Like neither of us are professional athletes or come from a professional athlete background. We're both recreationally into fitness and fairly into it in the nutritional, aspect of it. I was a neuroscience major, so I'm into the neuroscience and neurochemistry of it. Or at least I like to always look at it from that angle as well. And generally, you and I are both people who are, interested in bettering ourselves and things we can do. And this, to me, is a very clear biohack, as they are now called, a way you can hack your biology. And I was first introduced to it, just to answer your question. Again, not to make myself seem unrelatable, because I do believe this is something that is becoming more accessible and can be easily accessible in your scenario, which you will talk about. But I became introduced to cold plunges because my building has two of them. I moved somewhere and my building has a couple of them. And I was trying to remember if it was the chicken or the egg first. I think I went in them. So I have like a gym in my place with a sauna, steam room, cold plunge. And the cold plunge is a circulating water cold plunge. So pretty fucking cold, 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Went in it a couple of times and was like, holy shit, that felt great afterwards to go back and forth between that and the sauna. But the Huberman podcast, one of the podcasts that inspired us to make this one, is where I really started to get into the science of it and challenge myself to go longer and longer in it because I realized there was immense benefit.
Yes. And so I think that's a good segue.
And give us your background. Give us your background on how you got into it.
Yeah.
Or was it just me not shutting up about it? But
so I've always been since I think 8th grade. I've always been enamored by a really healthy, fit body. Having a massive chest, although my legs will not grow to save their life, but like having really nice calves and just being detailed. I never really cared about actually how athletic I was. I cared about the look. And so that's
you cared about not how much you could actually lift, but how much it looked like you could lift, right?
Yeah,
I think those are kind of the two camps of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, and now as I get a little bit older, I think less of that with jujitsu and other martial arts where it's I want to be able to defend myself. But all growing up, all I cared about was summer at the pool, being on the East Coast. Like, this is your time to shine. You better fucking look good. So how I was introduced to cold baths was very early on with football, and we had to just jump into ice baths. But at that point, you hated it. Like you never wanted to get in there. You liked the idea of it when it was blistering hot, but then once you got in there, you just couldn't wait to get out, and you didn't really care, and nor do you really care a lot when you're in high school. But I think when I started to really get into it was honestly, if I'm being completely honest, was this past year. And I was listening to Rhonda Patrick on Joe Rogan, and she talked about the benefits of cold exposure. And that started making me think, and I just started asking myself, look, I don't being fiscally conscious all the time. I'm not going to keep going out and buying 3 bags of ice every day and filling up my bathtub. That's not practical. And so I decided to do some more research and how I can, create a plunge or get a plunge. And instead of me looking at $2,000, $3,000, or paying $1,000 for a barrel, I decided to look into how people are converting ice chests. And so I developed this entire apparatus. I lined it with, pool liner. I covered up the creases in there. I put an ozone generator. I drilled a hole so I could have an ozone generator going through. And now I have something that's rinse and repeatable that I absolutely love. And
And
yeah,
total
so I
total
think
cost. Give us a total cost roughly.
I'll give you a total cost of how much it cost me, but I want to preface this with I could have done it significantly cheaper. I It was roughly about $1,600 in total with everything. And that's the GFCI breaker. That's with a filter. That's about $80. There's an ozone generator. That's about 130. The cold plunge was, I can't remember if it was like 850 or if it was 950. I think with taxes it was somewhere like around 1,000 if I remember correctly. And then there are a couple other pieces in there too. But yeah,
And maybe we can link that. Maybe we can link that somewhere. We can give a build sheet, or we can go more into it at some point. But I do think that's really important because I view the way you cold plunge is the way that most people could or would have access to. If I moved out of this place, I would immediately do exactly what you just did. I don't think that many people know about it, and especially for the benefit provided, it's in both of our minds a damn bargain in the long run.
it's I can't say enough good things about it. I can't. I mean, it's now my wife now does it as well. So just even for a couples, right?
Yep.
Couples who are trying to figure things out, and we have the stresses of each other's day. Talk
Yep.
about something that we can come, something that when we jump in there, we're always better as a result of coming out.
Exactly. And one thing that's often proposed as a step your foot in if you don't have your own cold plunge is cold showers. And don't get me wrong, I like cold showers. They build some resilience and such, but we'll get more into our specific protocols later. But I think there's still a night and day difference between a cold shower and a actual bona fide cold plunge in terms of the benefit derived.
100%. But the one thing that I do want to call out that your plunge has that mine doesn't is moving of water. It's the same temperature, but when you have that water circulating and moving, dude, there is that is just like a complete game changer because what happens is your body gets stuck. So if you sit in my plunge right now and you have your elbows to your sides and you're just sitting there, your body will adjust the fact of where it's getting some warmth, i.e., between my from my armpit and just that circumference there to it's stuck there and your body adapts to that. When you have constant water that's circulating, that's moving, your body doesn't get the opportunity to just sit there and relax. It's constantly getting hit. So I want to call that out that how you're doing it, we could have the same temperature, but yours is significantly more difficult in my opinion.
Sure. Well, and I also do full submersion as well. I have the ability to go, head under, which that's a whole nother fucking dimension, which which is wild. your scalp is not used to cold. I'll tell you that much. But takes some time.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I keep my toes out, and I've done that one time, and man, it's funny just even trying to like catch your breath in order to just put your
Yeah,
head
be able to.
under there.
Yeah, it's
Oh
crazy.
man.
Well, and just to give, I mean, yours. What temperature is yours roughly? I think you told me low 40s or such.
So I've now so I now have it up to right around 50 degrees. I did get as low as 40 and I was doing 10 minutes every single day. Now it's not every single day. I'd say out of the week, it's 4 to 5 times, and it's right at 50 degrees.
Got it. Understood. And just to give people the difference time wise, if you have access to circulating, which I do feel more people have, I've seen a couple of gyms with them here, but circulating, like my normal is 3 minutes, between 3 and 4 minutes. At the end of 4 minutes, I am shaking and shivering, and my max is 7 minutes. So just to give like a difference in terms of protocol, if you have access to one or the other.
Yeah, and I guess what would you say if, for the novice that has this access, that can either make one, or hell, if they even just want to get a, ice. I would probably recommend, if I guess I wouldn't recommend one way or the other. It's just about what you have available to you.
Get started in whatever you have, easy access to. You live in, Wisconsin, where you have a shit ton of lakes. Get started in a lake, which is technically kind of both circulating and still, but
Dude,
I guess
that is
mostly still.
that's boss moves right there. Yeah, you hop into a
Absolutely.
lake. That's Wim Hof right there.
That's when people do that, though. I actually recently, in preparation for this podcast, I joined a cold plunge group on Facebook where people are all into their different ways of doing it and what different things they use. And people use a vast variety of shit. And one of the motherfuckers on there was like, I jump in the river behind my house. Like
Dude,
that was one person's routine, was I jump in the fucking river behind my house.
is that group? Is it a Facebook group, or is it a
Yeah,
meetup,
it's
or?
it's a private group. I'll share it. It's a private group. Like to get in, you have to write like why you're interested in cold plunging and like the benefit you want from it.
Dude, I think I'm in the same group, and I love it. And that is the guy. That is the guy. Is it Jim Rick? No, not
Yeah,
Jim.
who teaches you
Uh,
how to make them? It's the guy with curly hair who teaches you how to make them.
he lives here. He lives in Buda. He lives like 10,
Oh, he
10 minutes
does?
away from. Yeah, yeah. He's in
Oh,
Central
damn.
Texas. That guy, and he's super responsive. We
Yo,
definitely need
he
to
should be on the
show
podcast. Why don't we should have him on the podcast.
that phenomenal idea, and we need to. And I think he's so responsive on there. I don't know if you've. When I was building my
No, I
car,
saw it. He responds to like everybody. It's nuts.
he is so legit, and that's another reason why it was a bit more expensive on my side. But a lot of the links that he would send, or that it helps him out in his program, and so
Yeah.
that was another reason where, dude, that guy's doing God's work, helping people transform something that otherwise you just never would think that a or that a chest freezer could be a cold plunge.
Yep. And drastically alter you know, your daily habits or whatnot. So should we go into the science of it or more the practical application, like the protocols of like how and when we use it? What should we hit first?
Um, I like the science debrief.
Got
That
it.
part to me
Um,
is in what's going on in your body, and also the effects of that. I think it can't be overstated.
for sure. I'm gonna let you can cover more if you want, like overall body. Specific to the brain, though, there are it doing the cold plunge is one of the most like profound impacts you can have on your neurochemistry, versus doing, in my, this is more my opinion, not based strictly in peer reviewed research, but like caffeine or a lot of the things you can do during the day to stimulate yourself or whatnot. I view these as some of the most profound impact I've had on my feelings, the way I feel throughout the day. Cold plunges impact three different types of neurotransmitter. It's norepinephrine, which is adrenaline, epinephrine, which is adrenaline, norepinephrine, which is noradrenaline, and dopamine. Dopamine is the happy neurotransmitter that most are familiar with. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are both involved in your fight or flight response, and are responsible for feelings of alertness, kind of on point, that type of feeling. So cold plunging in the morning, or whenever you cold plunge, but especially if in the morning, has a profound effect on raising levels of all three of those neurotransmitters throughout the entire day. So we're talking elevated mood, elevated happiness, elevated focus, basically everything that you want as a human being. Everything as a human being that makes you either succeed in what you're doing and enjoy what you're doing more while you're doing it. It does this by putting your body in this intense like, your body's producing these neurotransmitters because it feels like it needs those to survive, because you're putting it in this ridiculous state of stress very early on in the morning. And then on top of the neurotransmitter side, there is the psychology side, more the applied neuroscience, where we're talking about like the grit, right? The grit and the psychology behind doing this thing, which is incredibly difficult and goes against all of your baseline survival instincts, to get in this pool of water that could kill you, which is what I think is it's magic. What else do you do during a day that has the ability to kill you if you just stay there for an extra 20 minutes?
Jiu-jitsu.
Fucking nothing. Well, okay, fair, but fair. No, but that's a great point. Fair, but also jujitsu releases a lot of these same things. It releases a lot of that primal shit, which again we'll delve deep into, and you certainly know more about than me. But that's a similar thing for me. Also, it's paddleboarding, right? I also love paddleboarding as part of my daily routine, and I'll paddleboard out, farther than I can swim back with no life vest, and I'll tell you, it wakes me the fuck up.
So, question there, because I'm sure in your research, what I found as well, both personally as well as just digging around, is that cold plunges also help you sleep like a fucking baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, why do you think it is in the morning that you're able to get more out of it versus doing it later in the evening? And how is that also preventing you from, also, dragging ass maybe when the dopamine rush sort of just tapers down?
Sure. So what I found in my personal life is, at times I have not been able to plunge in the morning, and I can do it at night. And as long as, for me, if I'm getting 3 or 4 minutes a day, I feel sustained effect basically 24 hours. So I can do it at night. I will cite, though, Andrew Huberman's podcast with, I forget the guest, but we will have to link him because he was also extremely insightful into how to apply the cold protocols to your life. That when you sleep, your core body temperature actually raises a bit, and cold plunging at night can disrupt your sleep. I'm not extremely clear on the specific science behind that, but I do know that was a thing to consider when cold plunging at night. In the morning, I've actually just started that protocol myself for about the last week, where wake up 6 a.m., get in the fucking cold plunge. That is the first thing I do every day. And the level of discipline and self-regulation I have, I'm also in a cut right now, trying to lose some weight, mostly body fat, or as much body fat as possible. And the discipline that I have had, I legitimately, I don't want to say feel like a different person, but I can't overstate enough the amount of difference I have felt by starting my days like that. One other note, citing that same podcast with Andrew Huberman, if you are weight training for hypertrophy or for strength gain, so for muscle growth or for strength gain, it is highly advised to not cold plunge roughly 90 minutes after you complete said resistance training. So what I have made my protocol, what I did this morning, and because I pretty much have to lift in the morning. I can work very late. It can be kind of unpredictable. My gym closes at 10. I don't love, have the same drive at night. So I have been plunge at 6 a.m., to 6:15 to a couple rounds if possible, or just one. Let's be real. That's what I've been doing. It's just one round of 4 minutes steam room to warm back up, and then warm myself up even more, get my heart rate up to 140, 150. Go put my gym clothes on, work out, then come back and sauna after the workout. And I have found profound effect throughout the whole day, more so than when I was just lifting weights and doing a quick cold plunge, lifting weights, doing a long cold plunge, lifting weights, and cold plunging at night.
Yeah, the contrast, that contrast effect is, I personally haven't had the opportunity to truly experience that because one, sauna's not, I think one of these days I'm just going to say fuck it and build a sauna. But I can definitely imagine, and I could see the value of having a cold plunge earlier in the day, and I can definitely see the value of having that contrast early in the morning. Um, what do
By the way,
you,
contrast therapy, topic for another cold plunge. That's switching between hot and cold. Also something I'm very passionate about.
yeah, I think that's also important too, to make sure that just because we know that, making our viewers know that as well. So that's a good call.
True.
What
Although I
have
will say
you,
there's a lot of benefit to naturally warming. Sorry, not to cut you off, but I often don't because again it's easy for me. But there is also a lot of benefit. You burn a ton of calories by your body warming yourself up. Most people don't know this. A calorie is a unit of heat. It's a scientific unit of heat, and so that is like the purest form of burning, literally burning calories, is heating yourself back up. You use an insane amount of energy, because your body is mostly water. Water is one of the takes the most energy of almost any other liquid to heat up. So when you cool your whatever percentage water, 70+% water body down, and then have to warm it back up, that takes an immense amount of energy, aka calories.
it's a great segue into what I'm thinking and what I've heard. I think it could be really important for us to debunk this if it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
What have you been able to research on uh, through Cold Plunge? What have you been able to research on actually cutting weight and using that as a mechanism of burning fat, burning calories?
It is widely and scientifically supported that it increases your metabolism. I am not aware of the research, nor have I seen it as to how much. However, for a scientific study to state that it boosts your metabolism, it has to be by a scientifically significant amount, right? So if your basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories you burn just you know living your daily life, is 2,000 calories, it has to be more than like 2,050 calories for a study to be able to say that it um, raises your metabolism.
So this is one of those things where you're in a podcast and you're really kicking yourself for not doing research on this specific topic. That is one of the reasons why blindly I decided to build one. And that is
Mm-hmm.
the difference between brown fat and white fat. Um,
Yes, a very good point to bring up.
so, and keep me honest with this, but when you look at babies, right, they have a lot of brown fat. That's why the chunkiest ones are, they're the cutest, but that doesn't last, right? They grow into their
Mhm.
body, they lose that fat. Now, as you become an adult, what people don't realize is that fat cells, they don't really burn off, they shrink. They don't necessarily just, once you have those fat cells, for the wide majority, you are going to have those fat cells, and to truly get them off takes a ton of work, ton of discipline over a long period of time. For the most part, they're just shrinking. Where cold therapy, as I blindly understood this, is that through cold therapy, you are able to have that transfer where that white fat can become brown fat. And therefore, when you're actively working out, you're now able to actually burn that and get rid of that fat. Keep me honest, poke holes in that.
No. You're right. Actually, poke holes in what I said before. So that's actually right. I have up in my on another tab Andrew Huberman's breakdown from his newsletter of the science and use of cold exposure for health and performance. So he states in this, which he lists all of his peer-reviewed science as sources. In the short term, cold exposure increases metabolism. However, the calories burned from cold exposure are not that significant. So they're significant, meaning they are scientifically significant, but not that significant. What it does is allow the conversion of white fat into beige or brown fat. White fat is just used for energy storage, whereas brown fat and beige fat is used for actual metabolism and converting of energy to heat. And this is actually something interesting. I know this that the in your back, like the top of your spine, is where they have found the highest percentage of brown fat in people, and I feel tingling there when I go in the cold plunger, specifically when I come out of the cold plunger. I feel a tingling right there. Is that just me thinking about it and thinking that that's where the brown fat is? Maybe, but that is a hugely important part of cold plunging.
That's so weird. Yeah, I haven't noticed it, but now I feel like that's all I'm going to like. That's where I'm going to put my mind in every time I
Now
jump
that
in.
it's in your head, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Are we full of shit, or are we just believing it? Who knows? But no, that conversion again, something that we could be done another topic on, and not saying that I am a world expert in, but that conversion to brown fat is supposedly hugely beneficial to your overall health.
yes. And so a couple other things that I have been able to, and I need to cite these actually, but so I have here one study found that immersion in cold water, 57 degrees to be exact, raised people's blood levels of the neurotransmitters noradrenaline by 530% and
Yep.
dopamine by 250%. What other, like, I don't even know if there are drugs that are able to do this. Like, when you think about, I'm sure there
There
are,
there are. I was gonna say there are
but when you think of,
cocaine, baby.
God willing, baby, um, when you think of something just completely natural, people, something that is, I mean, able to change your mood drastically
Right.
and change how you go about your day, completely change your frame of mind. I can't think of anything else that I would rather do. It sucks jumping in, of course, but I can't think of anything else that I would rather do to get this type of effect and actually feel good and not feel like a piece of shit afterwards.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. So I'm trying to see something. I want to know the amount of dopamine that increases after sex, because that's another natural process that is incredibly involved in dopamine. And I'm curious if it is greater, less than, or equal to the amount of dopamine released by a cold plunge.
Well,
That would be very.
as you're looking up that, so this is another not stat, but again, I need to really cite these. The increase in adrenaline from being in cold water can create a feeling of euphoria. We know this. This is caused by the release of endorphins, a hormone that makes us feel good and can even relieve pain. Now, this ties into exactly what you're looking up. As a result of cold water swimming or a cold bath, it can improve not only your overall mood, your confidence, but also your libido.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
is, now,
Okay.
I will say it's not immediate, fellas, because it's
Mm-hmm.
tough to get in the mood when your nuts are in your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
But, but I can say that you let your body warm up and your mood's elevated. Yeah, I mean, uh, yeah,
So
I can
no,
definitely feel
that's
that.
That's fantastic. So I found a source for this. Tell me again, what's the percentage increase in dopamine from cold plunge? You said it a second ago.
250%.
250%. All right, just to contextualize that for people. Alcohol, getting drunk. Getting drunk is a 100% increase. Similar with nicotine. So similar with nicotine. Cocaine is about that 2.5 times. So it's a little bit less. Cocaine is more like 3x, but it's less than that, but not quite. However, meth is 11x, so we got shit on meth. Meth addicts.
Damn it! If I could find a boo on here.
But no, here's the best part of it though. Sex is the same. Sex is a doubling. So sex is a 200% increase. It is the same as, or 3x, but sex is the same.
What about masturbation?
I think that counts as sex, Bruce.
Well, I mean, there's something else to be said about like having a partner that you're really attracted about versus just.
True.
I mean, I guess
Yes,
you
but
have
also
to
an
be
orgasm.
attracted.
Orgasm is an orgasm. This is like dopamine released by orgasm. I mean, I'm sure there's other neurotransmitters, maybe more adrenaline and such released, but I don't know. Again, a topic I don't know enough about to say, one way or the other with certainty, but seems to me like
Yeah, I get because I just think of the mix of like there's effort involved, there's there's probably a bit of longevity in there, and I wonder if that has something to if if that's what if you just masturbated, if that's less. I don't know, but all that's to say is my point.
what if you masturbate in a cold plunge? I mean, does that you just transcend at that point? You levitate out of
That
it?
that's a god. That's what you call a god, living and breathing among us. But that's all right. So fellas, especially now, here is something that you can actually control because you really can't control when you get laid. Oh man, that's good stat.
Do you want better sex than with a woman? Do it by yourself in a cold bathtub. I promise. You'll never need sex again. You'll never need to get
Oh
laid again.
God, God, yeah, we're just gonna we're gonna breed a bunch of incels. Oh man.
No, incels would appreciate us for this. Incels are people who are involuntarily celibate. This is all they got. This is just heightening their existence.
Oh man, I bet that could be a podcast of its own.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, I don't know if it really ties into self-development, but like to understand how they got to that point.
True.
Um,
I was gonna say that and self betterment. Typically, I don't associate, but teach
so
their own.
what's interesting? So we don't have to spend too much time on this, but if you had to guess when cold therapy was initially started, or like when they found this discovery, what would you guess?
I mean, it could be ancient. I mean, ancient times. I like nothing would surprise me. I know it's been used in sports, right? You just mentioned ice baths in high school. So I know it's been used in athletics for quite some time. Um, but I have no idea. Like, I have zero idea.
So they suspect somewhere between 3,500 to 5,000 BC, somewhere in there. So the Greeks records show that Plato and Hippocrates conducted a wide array of studies into this practice using cold water, as well as hot water, and just to get an understanding of the body. Then, of course, the Romans, when they came in, they frequently used this for the gladiators or those after battle or competition, and they even saw this to soothe their muscles and relieve inflammation, pain from wounds, etc. And then the British during the British Empire. So there's like a huge, like we're talking about from 476 AD to the 18th century, the British Empire, of like this huge gap. But in the 18th century, ice baths and cold plunge were now fairly common at this time for fatigue, muscle spasms, various health conditions. And it was also at this time with new medical breakthroughs. This was roughly around the time where cold therapy then turned into like mud packs, ice packs, and
Mm,
methods for applying cold to the body.
cold.
And it just makes me wonder where it's you and I, we luckily we have podcasts and we're able to, we're in the know, but I don't know, like besides football practice, it blows my mind that this isn't talked about and this wasn't a main focus for the average person.
I know. I feel like it's getting there though. Another person we'd have to mention in a ice bath podcast is Wim Hof. Somebody else who's been gaining a lot of popularity. I thoroughly enjoyed and highly recommend his a book, Becoming the Iceman, and I forget the name of the author, but he basically studied with Wim for years and went through his whole process, and just fascinating what that man. He's in his 60s, late 60s, I believe, and looks like he's got the body of a 30-year-old. He's been doing this for quite some time. The craziest thing about him, this is a dude, if people aren't familiar, who hikes up mountains in like short shorts, and you has a certain breathing method and such to help keep warm. It's basically forced hyperventilation, and as I said, has been doing this for quite some time. One of the most interesting things about him, in my perspective, is that, again, we talked about what happens neurologically with cold plunges, but on the resilience side and what it does to your entire body and immune system, they injected Wim Hof and like a few of his followers, like 4 of his followers, with a strain of E. coli that was not E. coli itself, but like a very bad strain of E. coli, that like 1 in 1,000 people are resistant to, and every single one of them did not get infected with it. And the
Wow.
chances that all of them were naturally immune were basically nonsensical. So that shows that something that he is doing, something about that frequent extreme cold exposure, has just completely transformed his body.
Yes, because his thought is you want to avoid a cold, get in the cold. And yeah, we were told for forever, make sure you put a jacket on. You're going to catch a cold, you're going to get sick. And it just makes you question it makes you question so many things that have been
Yep.
bred in our knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. Uh, now it makes me second guess everything. It's why I love doing this podcast, because it's like, no, no, you've been told this all of your life, but no, no, that's not right.
I know. Well, it's fucking crazy. Think about this. I mean, this is a very interesting thought, but cold plungers are obviously great. Think about people who live like where I'm from. I'm Chicago, born and bred. If I go run around my block in shorts, that's the same fucking effect when it's 10 degrees out in the winter, right? Now you get into it gets so cold there that you do get into some very real like skin problems. If you stay out, you will frost the fuck out of your skin. But still, when I'm home this coming break for Christmas, I plan on exploring that.
Good God on you. Good on you, my friend.
We'll see. We'll see. Also, one hot tip I want to give people before I forget: Joe Rogan podcast, Rick Rubin. Highly recommend that specific episode. You listen to it?
Yep,
Yeah.
sure did.
Um, Super interesting guy. No matter if you have any interest in music or the creative space at all, I think you'd greatly enjoy it. But I stole his breathing method that he uses in cold plunges, and it for me was a game changer. I had kind of not been doing cold plunges as much for a bit, or kind of bitching out around the minute mark. He breathes in through his nose and out through his hand, like his hand over his mouth, and focuses on the warmth of his breath on his hand. Your hands and feet, by the way, are the 2 places in your body where you can like absorb or transmit heat and cold the fastest of anywhere else in your body. Huberman actually talks about a protocol where like weightlifters would just hold 2 ice packs and put their feet on 2 ice packs. That is actually the quickest way to get your body temperature down, like not that much different than being immersed cold body. And I've actually tried that before, and it fucking works. But anyway, Rick Rubin uses that to help him. He stayed in cold plungers for like 40, 50, 60
I was
minutes.
gonna say, yeah.
Ridiculous shit. And that was the method he used, and that's the method I use.
So I think that's a good segue into, we talked a bit about the protocols to be successful, but I guess if we're to recap, what protocols have you found to be successful?
So Huberman specifically states 11 minutes a week. That's what he states. He's done a lot more research than I on this. 11 minutes of being in water. This I do fully agree with. Water so cold that you want to get out, but it's not unsafe to. And again, unsafe means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but you shouldn't be shaking with cold in 40 seconds. That means you're probably overdoing it. Right when you get to that shiver point, I think is when you get out and you shiver just a little bit. In my mind, that's good, not uncontrollable shivering. I kind of use that as a barometer for myself. Huberman says 11 minutes per week cumulative. I think that is a bit light. I go, again, for me, that 3 to 4 minute mark is where I start to see a lot of difference. I do see difference at 1 to 2 minutes per day. So that, do what you can, right? Do what you can. But in my opinion, building it in as part of a daily routine, 3 to 4 minutes a day, again, for me, 7 days a week, 6 days a week, as regular as you can make it, the better.
Yep. So I find that now at 50 degrees, I can tell a complete difference from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Whereas if I'm able to do 10 minutes and 50 degrees, I'm my mood, I feel a drastic change in my mood in such a good way. Where the 5 minutes, I think probably some of this is also my body being acclimated to it. But at 5 minutes, it's like par for the course. Like I still feel good. I still feel the benefits. I still
Yep.
feel accomplished, but I'm not getting that juice. And so all that's
Yep.
also to say that and this is a good segue too of like recommendations on starting for the novice is the research that I found is anything under about 59 degrees, you're going to be able to get benefits and put a time on there. I wouldn't say do 10 minutes if it's your first time, 10 minutes right out of the gate. Start with 2 minutes or start even with 1 minute, just getting in there. And then you're gradually going to build up to that, like with anything. And then start just really paying attention and acclimating and understanding how you're acclimating to it. If you're getting out after 10 minutes, at one point in time at about 40, it was like 42 degrees, even 10 minutes at 42 degrees, I was starting to notice, I don't know, I was at a really good pace. So there's something to be said about being consistent and having a very consistent, great mood. There's also something to be said too of, all right, maybe I need to push that up a notch. Um, so that I don't know if you have any additional recommendations in terms of
Wholeheartedly
starting for the
agree.
novice.
Increase it slowly until you see the benefit. Is one thought. Second thought is remember, as I said before, water is the one of the liquids of all liquids on this fucking planet that takes the most energy to change the temperature of either heat up or cool down. Your body is 70+% water, which means if you go in for 30 seconds, you're not actually decreasing your core temperature that much, which is where and why a lot of this magic happens. Again, the specific mechanisms of have been detailed elsewhere, but one thing to keep very clear in your mind is that going in for 30 seconds, you're decreasing the temperature of your skin greatly, but think about your organs, your true core temperature. It takes longer than that to affect it. One of the doctors who cold plunges at my place, after he cold plunged, I think once 6 minutes, had a hospital thermometer. 89 degrees was his internal temperature. Yeah, which is some wild shit. Wild
Damn.
shit. And then lastly, third thought, my advice for staying in longer is, I already told you the thing with the hand. I keep track of time now. And I've tried doing, Andrew Huberman talks about walls. There's like walls of adrenaline. I only really like feel one wall in the beginning, which is that initial surge. But again, different methods for different people. I count breaths. I like counting
Mm,
breaths more because it takes less breaths the longer you stay in the plunge. So I go 30 breaths, and the first minute I probably expel like 12, 14 fit, like almost half of the breaths. But then my heart rate slows so dramatically and my breathing slows so much that it's very peaceful to count breaths because I'm aware of how slow I'm breathing. So again, I slowly increase the number of breaths I take, and that to me was a nice way to kind of settle in, and how I currently still time my plunges.
interesting. So I do a timer, but that's a good point where I'll ask you after I detail what it is that I do to just get through, my walls. I do math problems. I think of math problems and
Yes, yes,
all I do is just keep thinking of that. And then
that's
I know
incredible. That
that,
keeps you sharp as fuck. Yeah,
yep. And
yep.
then I keep my Zen where I know that I've reached my Zen, if you will, is I'll start talking out loud. Sometimes Brie will be out there with me, sometimes it's just myself. And then I'll start saying sentences or I'll start singing a song out loud to see if I'm like shivering or like if I'm past that point. Nowadays I've done it enough to where I can hop in there and for the most part after the first 30 seconds I can talk normal. But
Mhm.
for the average, what recommendations would you have for the novice hopping in and just trying to get through that mental barrier?
Yeah, no, I think that the math problems is great. I need to re-explore that, and I've been meaning to. Because the math problems is what used to get me through it, and help me get through it. I used to just do multiplication tables: 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 16 times 16, 18, like all like, as high as I could fucking go, and like talk about starting your day off with something hard. You take a long breath, you dunk yourself under fucking freezing cold water, and you're like, I'm not coming up till I get 21 times 21. Like that's it. Like that's fucking it, or I die here, I guess. And my mental, like, not even kidding, my mental math ability just like went way, way, and has stayed way higher since, and I credit just that. um I can now I work. Mhm.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it
No,
just
go.
popped in my head. I'm like, I wonder for the college student in terms of actually studying for I wonder
I wish I had known this.
that would be really interesting because I wonder if things stick more. I wonder if you develop more of an understanding. I feel like it'd be hard to understand something in a challenging environment, but if you've practiced ahead of time and now you're trying to get it to stick, I think it sticks while you're in a cold plunge or in an environment that's difficult. I don't know.
No, neurochemistry. That's basic neurochemistry. What does norepinephrine and epinephrine increase? It's your alertness, right? You are more likely to remember something if you are in that state. Think about it. If you're in a life or death situation, right? Let's say you're like truly about to die, and I'm trying to think of a good example. You're rock climbing, you're about to die, and you jump a certain way, and you're able to hold onto the rock above you, right? You're going to fucking remember how to do that again if ever faced with the same scenario
Good example, yeah.
with absolute certainty, right? Because your brain is flooded with these chemicals that are these fight or flight chemicals that are, again, alertness and shit. Yeah, you would absolutely, and I'm positive we can find peer reviewed research on that. That would back that up. I know, I think I've seen similar. I can't again cite the exact one, but yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, man, um, this is exactly what I think viewers need to know about cold plunges.
Yeah.
Um, what
Yeah, hopefully we've shed some light on we have both felt immense benefit from this. Um, get out, find a cold plunge if you have one, readily available to you. Call a couple of gyms, see if they've got them. If you want to, try it before dropping a grand on your own. I wish there was a more accessible way to just, I mean, you honestly could. I mean, a more accessible way would be get like a real big, like Rubbermaid container, fill it with water, go grab a few bags of ice from 7-Eleven if you want to try it, 4 or 5 times or a week that way before committing to $1,000 purchase. I know Bruce and I are both fiscally responsible and attempt to be frugal human beings as well. And, if you want to try it, try before you buy, certainly try your best to find a method, but I would caution against using only a cold shower to evaluate it. As we said before, I don't think that's quite enough, but do whatever you can, get out there, start plunging. Let us know what you think.
Yep. I totally agree. And look, for, how I started before I built my cold plunge is, I would take the cold shower in the summer of Texas. Pipes do not get that cold. So, I was left with, still a pretty warm body temperature. I would bring out a fan and I would literally sit in my bathtub and I would have that fan blowing at me for at
Nice.
least like 2 or 3 minutes. So all that's to say is, look, you can start very small. You don't have to go out and you don't have to build something, just as Nick said, right away. But what we're going to do in these show notes is we're going to put a Facebook group for anyone who is interested in understanding a bit more about cold plunges and how to build them. We'll put that in there. Also, a link to the book that I leveraged to build mine out, as well as some other links to some of the research that we were able to discuss on today's podcast. Other than that, be against the herd, my friends.
Yes, if they're running one way, doesn't mean you got to run with them.
Fucking right. God, you were waiting for that, weren't you? You son of a bitch.
I just popped in. That was popped straight in, my friend. I had no preconceived.
Well done. You have been just sticking the landing on this. All right, y'all.
Wrap.